BBJ supports dozens of different controls, but occasionally you may have a need for a very specific type of control that's outside of the realm of common controls. In some cases, you can build that control by combining two or more BBJ controls, or even by modifying the look and behavior of a standard control using some clever CSS. In this video, we're looking for a very specialized control that's specific to time entry. Sure, we could use a masked BBJ input-end control, limiting the input characters to numbers and formatting the data in hours and minutes, but instead we're shooting for a very graphical and intuitive way of entering starting and ending times. Since we want something that's easy to use and we don't mind coloring outside the lines every once in a while, why not use an analog clock for time input? Since we don't want to invest a lot of time into this, let's set some goals. 1. We shouldn't have to write a lot of code. 2. We shouldn't have to use the keyboard for time entry. 3. We should look into using a freely available library. 4. The library should work across all major browsers. 5. The library should work in a touch environment. And 6. The library should be modifiable in case it doesn't fit our expectations out of the box. We start by exercising our Googling skills and end up with a lot of potential candidates. Apparently, a lot of other programmers had the same need, and there are a variety of libraries that solve the input problem in very interesting ways. This one looks like a clock, but the 24-hour input and the bland colors aren't quite what we had in mind. So let's see how flexible it is. The options indicate that we can set the default time, set a 12 or 24-hour mode, etc. It also works in all browsers down to IE9, and touchscreens aren't a problem. The demo looks great. We can select the hours by moving a hand around the clock, and it allows for hours and minutes inputs, and we can toggle between the two. After downloading and exploding the zip, the next step is to integrate it into our timesheet app. Step 1. Set the HTML text for the BBjHtmlView control that we're using to keep track of when the employee checked in. The clock picker documentation wasn't very helpful here. Sometimes that's the price of free software. But after looking at their demo source, we need to include an HTML div with a unique ID and an input tag. We also included an onChange event where we pass the input value back to our BBJ program via the basis dispatch native event mechanism. Step 2. Inject the JavaScript library contents into the HTML view. Step 3. Set a callback so that our BBJ program can react to a JavaScript event in the input control. Step 4. Execute a line of JavaScript to instantiate the clock picker using the unique ID from Step 1. And finally, Step 5. Have our callback code display the selected time in a standard BBJ message box to see if it works. Let's take it for a test spin. Clicking in the HTML view control causes the clock picker to display, so it looks like we didn't make any programming mistakes. We can select the hour by moving the clock hand, and letting go of the mouse button changes the display to minutes. We can toggle AM and PM if desired, select the minutes, and then click OK. The clock picker library then fills the input with the selected time, which triggers our onChange event and sends the time to BBJ. Our callback routine fires and displays the selected time in a BBJ message box. Through the magic of video, all of our code worked the first time, and we're now free to experiment. To improve our app, we'll add in some custom CSS, both for the BBJ side and for the clock picker side. Additionally, we'll make a couple of small improvements to the clock picker JavaScript code. The clock is huge, so we'll make it scalable, and our timesheet app will use a smaller version to streamline the input. The time display at the top of the picker doesn't contain the AM/PM designation unless you click on the AM/PM buttons, so we'll add that and make it clickable to toggle the time periods. After our changes are in place, we're ready to run the updated timesheet app. Our custom CSS has given our app's user interface an overhaul. We've darkened the HTML body's background color and changed the application's title bar. Our fonts are larger, bolder, and yet they don't take up much more space since we're using a condensed font family. The radio buttons, checkbox, and buttons at the bottom of the form have also undergone massive changes. Clicking in the time in field brings up the clock picker as expected, but this time we dimmed everything behind the pop-up via CSS. The time at the top of the picker now displays the AM/PM designation automatically, and clicking on this field toggles a value, and the AM/PM buttons toward the bottom of the picker change to reflect the chosen period. After selecting the hour, we can select the minute either by dragging and dropping the clock hand, or by simply clicking anywhere on the clock face. Our timeout field is similar, so after selecting a time in and a time out, our program computes the total work time and displays it in a read-only field. Our timesheet app works great, and the addition of the clock picker adds some character and makes the app fun to use. We were rather gutsy, delving into the world of HTML and JavaScript, but our experiment paid off considerably.